The Point After Show.
He's going savage.
Run for your life!
And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. Playoffs? What talk about? Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
The Point After Show.
I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the he wants.
The Point After Show.
Spikes in hell. Spikes in pee-wee hell.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Week 5 of the Point After Show. I'm here with Paulie Bag of Walnuts, or what's your alias this week, bud? Who knows, right? Joe Caviston and Ed Skarupa as co-hosts, as always. We're here to talk fantasy football. We'll kick it off this week with a little bit about our league again. Ed, what happened with your fantasy matchup this week in Lipko's Legends?
My wide receivers suck. That's all I can say. I mean, Cam Newton, he's on the COVID list. And my wide receivers are just poop. I have Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones and Melvin Gordon. They all put up like 20 plus each. And I think I scored about 115 total. So
Yeah,
that goes to show the rest of my team.
Yeah, 137 total. I thought after the Packers' first drive there, you had obviously your numbers were lighting up like a street light. You were in the green. I thought you were going to pass Chachi and actually pull off the win with a huge Aaron Jones game. You needed about 30 points, but unfortunately,
I don't know. He went MIA for a little bit there, and I don't know what happened. Like Jamal Williams and the rookie Dylan were.
There was a lot of people on
Twitter
Twitter like all up in arms about his MIA, his absence from about
did he have to take a
two
shit?
drives. He didn't see
or
him.
what?
I don't
know.
He might have had an Eddie.
He might have.
He pulled the natty, dropped the deuce, was MIA for a little bit, and Eddie unfortunately wasn't able to pull off the win. Brought him down to a 1-3 record in a tough league for sure. Again, this year is funny with a lot of injuries, people going down. You never know who's gonna be out this week. Like you said, the COVID list. Kicking it off to Fantasy Judas over there. Finally got his ship right, up to 160 fantasy points this past week. Basically doubled his season numbers there and got the W against Griebel, the trade monster. Smoke, how do you feel right now about your fantasy squad?
Optimistic. Obviously, last week I was down in the dumps. I couldn't even average over 100 points for the first 3 weeks, but it came back around. Obviously, I got George Kittle back this week, which is huge for me, and he delivered. Antonio Gibson is on the upswing, which is phenomenal to have, where everybody drafted him. And I had to switch out Big Ben for obvious reasons, and I went with Fitzpatrick, who didn't have the greatest week, but he had enough to pull me through. But still have some glaring gaps in my team, which Eddie will probably talk about later on in the show, that I have some big holes that I have to figure out.
Yeah, and you brought your record, like you said, Kittle having a monster game for you. He's back from injury, which is huge for you. Hurts everybody else that's kind of has any San Francisco offense. Hopefully Jimmy G comes back this week and steadies the ship. But let's talk about the one person that has the most chatter in our league, Joe Caviston. This guy was expected at fantasy draft day to finish in the bottom 2 of the league in a 12-man league. Made that nice little hefty bet against Mike Arnice. Cavi's now 3-1 with another 160-point week. He's overperforming for sure. Alvin Kamara's been a super stud for your squad, Cav. What's your fantasy outlook for this season?
Feel good. I told you guys after week 1, I was a little nervous, but I thought I figured things out. Made a couple changes, unloaded Mark Ingram, which I think was good because it got me out of a couple weeks where I would have played him and it would have hurt me. But I think he serves a purpose on the team I traded him to. But for me, it ended up dodging a couple bullets, or I played a couple flyers that end up getting me a bunch of big points. I need to figure, one more piece out, and then I'm feeling good though. I'm happy with my team. They're performing. I have, 2 guys on my bench that are putting up positive numbers every week. So I feel solid about my bench too. Optimistic is how I'll put it.
And here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say too, is you look at your squad. Yeah, you're in 3rd place in our league right now. I know last year a lot of people dogged my fantasy team. I ended up finishing 3rd for the season, but I was like bottom 3 in fantasy points. I just ran into everybody when they had bad weeks. You can't really say that about your team. I think you're about 5th in points in our league this year. And you look, your points against are kind of low on the weaker end, but you're still putting up points every week. So it doesn't matter who you play. I think you're looking golden in that bet. If I were you, I'd start talking, potential buyout with Arnice.
I'm just hoping.
Send me $100 now. We could call the bet off.
If I somehow, end up winning, then that bet gets doubled, and I'm walking with $300. So I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, so that's nice.
I don't mean to interrupt. I do want to say that I want to go on air and I want to go on record by saying that I apologize to Cavi. I really did think that you had a terrible draft. You had, I thought your team was terrible, but you really did figure it out. So kudos to you, man. You made a couple minor tweaks to your team. You put a couple guys in place, and you've been on a roll, man. So good job to you. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to seeing you win that $150, maybe $300. I don't know. But let's talk about Tommy's team. Tommy, what happened to you this week?
I ran into the buzzsaw, right? Like, what do? I played against Dak Prescott, Joe Mixon, and I don't even know who the
Odell Beckham.
Odell Beckham. All put up almost 50 fantasy points in our league. You look at just those 3 players alone, he outscores 8 out of the 12 teams in our league right there. Here was the biggest slap in the face was going into Monday night, I still had 4 players going. Obviously, Devontae Adams, not playing hurt. But the slap in the face was Mazda didn't even go out and try to pick somebody up to start in Sony Michel's running back slot on his squad. So
he beat you with a 0 on his team.
Yeah, he beat me with 1 person down. And again, good for him. He knew it, right? Like, I had to put up 80-some fantasy points with Julio, Devontae Adams, Todd Gurley, and I forget who else I had going last night. Didn't work out. I only put up like 140, I think.
132. 132.
So it was rough.
There was 8 people in our league that are 7. 7 people in our league that outscored you this week. Does that make you nervous?
Again, I had my number 1 draft pick, Devontae Adams, not play. I had Julio Jones, who was a recent acquisition, play the first half, but again, he didn't look good. Actually, I was a little nervous about Julio there, not only because of his hamstring injury leading up to this game, but maybe it's just me. He looked like he put on a little beef this offseason here. I don't know if it was no preseason. Didn't really look like himself. I know week 1.
We might get into him later.
But, again, going, Pops is 4-0 on the season again. He's looking to do back-to-back. And the scary part about his squad is
his 2 best players are out.
Yeah. McCaffrey hasn't played in a couple weeks. Michael Thomas hasn't played in a couple weeks, and he's still 4-0. I think he's 2nd in the league in points. The one good thing is, all of us as a league need to start beating up on Rivera, right? This was another contender that we talked about all preseason. And obviously this past week he had the Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, who both went on the IR this week, out multiple weeks. I know Arnice, I don't know if he was boozing heavy or what, but was sending Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Thielen out for an undrafted rookie first game this week, and Steph Diggs. It was unbelievable. A lot of ruckus in the league about that.
Yeah, I'll say this. This is one thing that irks me about when I'm in a fantasy league and I see a team that has a very, very good team, and then you get as the outside teams, right? When you see a really good team get hit with the injury bug, like Pops did. Now Rivera is getting hit with the injury bug. Like, nothing irks me more than when somebody goes and tries to make trades with them to help their team. It's like, to let them die on the side of the road for as many weeks as we could possibly get, right? If you have if your 2 best players go on IR, like, theoretically you should be dead to rights for a couple of weeks. Don't go help them. Like, I don't care how much it helps your team. If you're helping that team, you're hurting yourself. So that's my own thing. I wasn't really completely opposed to the trade that was made, but at the end of the day, any help to a guy that's just got 2 giant injuries is not good. Just stay away from that.
Well, especially since he traded away Hunt. You know what I mean? Like that, I was just like, come on. Like, we're just putting him back in it. Like, he traded away Hunt the week before, which almost screwed me this week. And then, you're going to go
Hunt did screw me because the week that he traded Lawyer Pete that week. I was playing Lawyer Pete that week, who had nobody playing. Rivera traded him a bunch of good players. It worked out for both of them. He got Galladay, Pete got Hunt, and somebody else, I forget. But those 2 players both had good weeks and ended up beating me. So it kind of backfired. And it was funny because Rivera and Arnice would have been making a trade again this week, knowing that I'm playing Arnice this week. And I play Rivera the following week. So it's like, I feel like everybody's just like, oh, look ahead. I'm playing Paul. Going to get some stack up that deck on me. Not that anybody needs to.
I think you're a little paranoid.
Yeah, well, definitely paranoid. I was getting ready
to
say
Arnice way too much credit to think he knows.
I'm definitely paranoid. I'm definitely paranoid because trust me, nobody needs to stack the deck against my team. I had one good week. I hope I can piece it together and get a second week. Here's the thing. This is the only week of the year that I'm pretty sure that the other 10 players in the league that aren't in my matchup will root for me. When I play Mikey, when I play Arnice, everybody will root for me.
No, still won't.
I don't believe it.
I'm getting t-shirts.
Here's the thing.
I don't believe any of you guys will root for Arnice. Not a single one.
This is what I'll say. I'll say if you were playing Donald Trump, I'd still root for Donald Trump. I'd still root for Donald Trump to win that matchup. But anyway, that's that. And listen, that's our league. Hopefully, all you listeners out there are enjoying your league as much as we do. Listen, we have a group thread that it is just literally nonstop shit talking from 6:30 in the morning when somebody first wakes up until 1 a.m. when somebody finally goes to bed, and it's just nonstop. I know Eddie probably just scrolls through most of those texts now. But
it's like reading the newspaper every morning.
So it's a good time. So, let's jump out of our league and let's just jump into some of the segments that we have tonight on the show. One thing we want to talk about here are some stock rising. This is one of our segments that we have every week. And I know Cavi, last week had some issues with all of his picks, stock rising, stock fallings. Even his one bet that we had with this stream of the week with Wilson Jr., obviously that didn't pan out for him, so he owes me a bet with the McKinnon area. But, Cav, who do you have this week on your stock rising? And give me a little explanation why.
I got Scotty Miller. I was a little down on him last week just because historically the week when Godwin was out last, it didn't really go his way. But this week you have Godwin's questionable again. O.J. Howard's hurt. He's not going to be playing. Mike Evans is real banged up. He's going to be playing at like maybe 50%. Mike Evans, though, he went out there on a bum ankle this week and threw down a great week. But I think if you have Scotty Miller hanging around somewhere, I think he's a really great play this week. I think he's good for a touchdown, maybe, again, about 75 yards. So if you need to stream somebody or, you need to fill a spot, I think he's good. And I think he's going to be good moving forward. He's the new Julian Edelman. Tom Brady loves his Wes Welker, his Julian Edelman, and Scotty Miller is filling that position for him. And he's getting the looks, he's getting the targets. As long as he could pull them in, he does miss a couple that, he's not as good as a Julian Edelman as far as pulling them in, but he's scrappy and, I think he's gonna get his looks every single week going forward. So I think he's rising and he's somebody to stash. I think he's only owned, I think I looked today, in like 17% of leagues. So
yeah, and again, I'll agree with you on a short week, right? With Tampa Bay playing the Bears on Thursday night this week, is Godwin doesn't look good to play. Like you said, O.J. Howard's out for the season now, and coming back, right? He's been doing these numbers as a number 2 with Godwin out. When he's got number 3 guarding him, I think he could put up similar, if not better, numbers going forward. So I like the play, Cav, for sure, going there. Scotty Miller, especially, obviously, you saw Tom Brady dishing it this week. I think he had 5 touchdowns to 5 different receivers, which is Tom Brady type thing. So I like the pick. So nice play. E-Dog, who do you have as your rising star and why?
Well, my stock riser and faller, they kind of go hand in hand. But I'll start off with my riser, and it's Chase Edmonds for the Cardinals. I just think that I'll get into Kenyon Drake in a little bit, but I think they're starting to realize that first and foremost, it's the Kyler Murray show there. But I think people were drafting Kenyon Drake as kind of, catching balls out of the backfield and having, being a workhorse there. And it's not the case. And Chase Edmonds just seems to be getting more and more opportunities. Just this past week against Carolina, he ran 15 passing routes to Drake's 0. And he had 10 touches this past week. Is the second time this season so far he had 10 touches or more, and he had a touchdown in each of those games that he had at least 10 touches. So I do think that he's just outperforming Drake, and I think he's going to get more and more opportunities as long as he keeps doing what he's doing.
So let me ask you this on Chase Edmonds: is this isn't a guy that you're necessarily going to start right away? Is this a guy that you're kind of keeping and stashing on your bench as somebody you see as the year progresses will get more and more touches and potentially?
Yeah, I mean, especially now with bye weeks coming up, you never know what team's going to be quarantined or what game's going to be canceled next. I mean, having a Chase Edmonds as like your RB 4 or 5 on your bench, or throw him in as a flex play if you need one desperate week, especially now when there's going to be 4 or 5 teams, sometimes 6 teams per week on bye. You're going to be scraping at the barrel soon in some of these upcoming weeks, I think, especially with the unknown and uncertainty of teams being quarantined and games being canceled as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chase Edmonds can, show that potential as being a starter, somewhere down the road. If not,
I think especially in PPR leagues as a flex play, if you need one, I think he'll be a good one, good fit there.
I like it. And speaking of catching balls and Kenyon Drake, Paul, who do you have this week as your riser?
So I got Tim Patrick, wide receiver from Denver. He's only owned in less than 5% of leagues. But he's put together back-to-back solid weeks. This week he went for 6 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. But over the first 4 games, he's averaged 5 targets, 4 catches. He had his first 100 yards. Like I said, he had a great week this week, over 100 yards receiving. Back-to-back games with a touchdown. And here's the thing. That team is just riddled with injuries. It started early on with Cortland Sutton, and obviously then Drew Lock went out. So they got Rippon in there as their backup quarterback. Now they have injuries to Fant. They have injuries to KJ Hamler. Tim Patrick is a great pickup right now. They have a good schedule coming up. They play New England this week coming up in week 5, where they've given up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers. They play Miami the next week, where they've given up the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And then after that, they play Kansas City, who obviously is really, really stingy against wide receivers. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to throw the ball. You're going to have to throw the ball. It's basically game script. And, if you look at Kansas City, although they don't give up a lot of fantasy points, they've given up 80-plus receiving yards to 3 out of 4 wide receivers this year that they've played against. So big-time wide receivers anyway. So I think that all in all, like for the next 3 weeks, Tim Patrick could be a great play in your lineup. And then they leads into the bye week. So I'm rising on Tim Patrick. I definitely think that he actually almost ended up as my stream of the week this week.
Yeah, and I like him too. Like you said, he had a touchdown in the back-to-back games. I think he's a guy for sure that you want to keep. I don't know if he's going to be in starting rosters unless, we're starting it to get into bye week. So you might have him as a flex play at some point, or a wide receiver 3 if you have deeper leagues. But he's definitely a guy that's on my radar for sure to keep an eye on. But
can I so here real quick, I just want to say this. I think we're at the point now when you get into week 5 in fantasy worlds, right? You start to look at, we've already talked about this with players that just aren't panning out, right? We just talked about, Drake. So same thing from the wide receivers. There's guys out there that we're going to talk about in a minute that just aren't panning out for you, that you drafted in positions that they should have been better than they are. it's time to start looking at streaming players. Like, you got to start playing matchups, and you got to start taking those big name players out of your lineup, and you got to start putting guys in there that are producing, like Scotty Miller, in matchup situations. If you want to win fantasy, you can draft at the beginning of the day. You drafted this team that you thought was great. If it's not panning out, you got to start to stream players.
So when you say this, then, you just got done talking about how you have guys that you drafted that aren't panning out. So now that you see that and you're realizing that their trade value, you had a Twitter poll out, trade low, bench, drop. Are you going to agree with me that the first 3 weeks is actually where you could trade people at their floor if they were drafted high, just so you could have a talking point as, listen, this is a first round draft pick, man, is you need them, right? Like you're Kenyon Drake. Your first 2-3 weeks, you had an opportunity to trade him, say, hey, he's a first-round draft pick. People realize he was like around the first-round draft pick. They may have stoked him up off your squad, but now you're lucky if you're going to get like a Mark Ingram for him.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the fact that in the first 2 to 3 weeks, you have a talking point that, hey, look at where he's drafted. He has all the potential in the world versus where – but you don't anticipate by week 5 these guys are still flopping. And you want to try to play these guys out. It doesn't work out all the time. They're every first round, every single year, there's busts. Unfortunately, I seem to find all of them. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with you to a point.
So, yeah, and about time you finally agree with me. Maybe one day when you start agreeing with me.
It's ticking.
Maybe one day if you agree with me a little bit earlier in the season, you might win a championship, but until that day, it's not going to happen. So anyway, moving forward, and speaking of the guy, E-Dog, let's jump with you. Who is your stock falling right now in the NFL?
Well, I talked about him a little bit with my Chase Edmonds stock rising. But Kenyon Drake, Paul, sorry, buddy. He's just he's not good, or hasn't been good, I should say. Just averaging 3.8 yards per carry through 4 games. Has 1 touchdown. It was in the first week. Hasn't had more than 2 targets in the last 2 weeks out of the backfield. I don't know. As I said with Chase Edmonds, I just think that he's not performing. Chase Edmonds is. I think Chase Edmonds is just going to start taking. Even I know it's not. It's probably like 60-30 in Drake's favor right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if it went closer to 50-50 in a couple weeks.
I as a Drake truther all year long.
And I know 60-30 doesn't add up to 100.
That's what I was going to say, Eddie.
There's
10% of the downs where there's nothing in the backfield.
That's the booze talking.
But I would say this. So, people that follow me on Twitter know Kay Adams is my girl, right? And she's the same way. She was a Drake truther too, and we all. I really did think he was going to have I barked him up to everybody and anybody I took. Sometimes you get it wrong. I agree with you, Eddie. He's not good. I watched him this week. I talked to Tommy for the first 3 weeks, and I'm like, they just don't give him the ball in the red zone. They don't give him the chances. Kyler Murray is just kind of stealing a lot of his thunder with these runs from inside of 5 yards. They gave him the ball. He's terrible. He's terrible. He doesn't. And when you put Chase Edmonds in against the same defenses and he's breaking 6, 7, 8, 15, 20-yard runs that Kenyon Drake can't get past the line of scrimmage, it's no wonder that Miami got rid of him. Personally.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. I have him in one league, and I took him there only because you were barking him, and I'm like, if my brother's right, I'd like to benefit from it. It didn't work out, obviously. Thank God that you got him in our league, but Kenyon Drake is junk. So, Cav, let's talk. Who do you have this week as your stock falling? And hopefully you don't bash me too much on this one.
I got Julio Jones as my stock falling. I mean, he's banged up. I'll give him that. He is banged up. But he's had 8 points over the last 3 weeks. That's not what you're looking for out of Julio Jones. Whether you drafted him or whether you're traded for him, you're just looking for more out of him at that point, more value. The Falcons have a lot of weapons. They're spreading the ball around a lot. Julio Jones isn't even getting the looks. I mean, he only had 4 targets this week. And, I mean, Russell Gage had 4 targets. So it's like if you're looking to gauge the same amount as you're looking to Julio Jones, I think even maybe the Falcons are thinking, and Matt Ryan's thinking, like, it's, you know, he's in a bad position, or he's not ready to play, he's hurt. You know, they're not utilizing him in the way that you
Well,
want.
he's definitely hurt. If you look, you know, in his defense, and obviously as a person that just recently traded for him, he didn't play the entire second half yesterday. So, you know, he had those 4 catches in the first half. But again, that's the scary part. He didn't play in the second half, and who knows what's going to happen going forward, right? Do they put him on the short-term IR, you know?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're somebody that like tried to take advantage of somebody to get that player, and then it ends up that like it backfired on you. I would probably be real upset about it. You know, but fantasy karma is fantasy karma. But yeah, like I mean, like I said, I totally agree. I mean, Julio Jones is one of the greatest receivers of all time. He is banged up right now, but you can't be having, you know, he should be your wide receiver 1. Or like if you traded for him, maybe you're using him as wide receiver 2 at this point. You can't be having that person get 4 targets, you know, in a week. You know, like I said, Russell Gage is getting the same amount of targets. So, you know, you just need more out of him. So he's my stock falling. And I think until he gets healthy, he's going to keep falling, you know?
Yeah. And as a Julio owner, thank God he's my number 3 actually right now. Which is good for me. I actually hope that they put him on the 3-week IR and put him out for a little bit, let him get healthy, let him get that hamstring right? Like that's nothing to mess around with as a wide receiver. And Cav, I hate to say this, and actually I don't mind saying it this week. It's because the league dogged me saying I took advantage of Greeble Sox in our trade, but obviously Sox got the better of that, right? Like Miles Gaskins had a good week, and T.Y. Hilton's still healthy, but not putting up big numbers. And speaking of T.Y. Hilton,
Savant.
Smoke, what do you think about the guy?
Well, I think this much of him. He's my stock falling / plummeted stash / drop him off your team. T.Y. Hilton is, I said it. T.Y. Hilton's just, he's terrible. He's terrible for every fantasy owner where he was drafted, where you expect him to be. First 4 games, less than 8 fantasy points in every game. Less than 5 fantasy points in 2 out of 4 of them. So, like, you're not even getting 5 fantasy points. You're not getting 8 fantasy points in any of these games from him. Hasn't had more than 4 catches or 53 yards in a single game. He was out-targeted this week by Zach Pascal. I'll say that again, right? He was out-targeted this week by Zach Pascal.
Ooh,
last 3 games, he's had 5 targets, 3 targets, 5 targets. They're not even looking his way. He can't beat defenders anymore. Phillip Rivers, he's just not his target. It's just not his favorite look. It's just not his favorite read. And if I'm being honest, I just don't think Phillip Rivers is that good. I think that's a running team, run-first team behind a great offensive line. Phillip Rivers, if you look at his numbers, he's not going to hold up a number 1 wide receiver in fantasy anymore. And they play the Browns this week, which if you look at the Browns, they give up a bunch of fantasy points to wide receivers, but not to the number 1 receiver on the team because he gets Denzel Ward. And I'm telling you right now, T.Y. Hilton's not going to beat Denzel Ward. He's going to have another bust week. I think it's time to unload T.Y. Hilton. 3 catches, 29 yards last week. It's not going to get any better for him, so I'm off on him.
Oh, would you start Tim Patrick over T.Y. this week?
100%. If anybody's in on a bet on that one, I'll take it.
No, I kind of like it.
Tommy, you like T.Y. over Patrick?
Yeah, I'll take T.Y. I know he has a tough matchup. I know he has a tough matchup, and I know this season so far he hasn't had big numbers, but T.Y. is the deep ball. You look at his career, right? He's that deep ball threat. He's going to catch one of those long passes in a game for like 50, 60 yards for a touchdown that inflate his numbers his entire career. You look historically, he hasn't been really much of a double-digit touchdown guy. So you kind of knew what you're going to get with him, especially with a new quarterback. And again, I say this going into week 5 now is there was no preseason, and it's still trying to build chemistry. I still think T.Y. Hilton by the end of the year will have 6-7 touchdowns, and I think this week is the first week he breaks out. I think he has, I'm not saying 100-yard game, but pretty close, and a touchdown this week versus the Browns.
I'll take all of that. Do you think? Let me ask this question, and I'll ask I said it, but I'll ask all three of you guys. Do you think that Phillip Rivers can still produce a number one a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football?
Yeah.
I don't. Did you see him throwing that? He was struggling to get the ball downfield this week. That sidearm, I mean, he never learned how to throw.
He's always had that, but I agree with you. He's always had that kind of push mode. That's not his problem. Problem is he's just not a good quarterback anymore.
Well, what I'm saying is I think as you go forward, I mean, Phillip Rivers always relied just on muscling that ball with that passing motion. He never learned how to throw the ball. He never got the mechanics down, which always was fine because he did fine. But now as you get older, look at Tom Brady with the elasticity. Yeah, he saved his body. He can still sling it. And I mean, even he's wearing down. But Rivers, when you're just throwing with your arm, sidearm, it's gonna come down. I mean, he's 40 years old too, right?
Yeah. Well, he's up. He's getting up. He's Big Ben's age. They came out in the same.
Yeah, so he's 40.
So he's close to 40. But here's the thing: I don't think that they're expecting him to do what he did in San Diego. They're not expecting him to throw the ball 30 times, 40 times a game. They're not expecting him to throw for 300 yards. That is a run-first team. They're not wanting him to be that guy. They just, at this point, he has been relegated to a game manager, and I just don't think he's going to be able to produce I don't even think he's going to be able to produce a top 24 wide receiver on that team, personally.
I think you're on drugs. I think T.Y. Hilton and that offense will come around. That's just my thought.
I hope you're right. For fantasy purposes, I hope you're right.
It just takes time. So anyway, let's move off T.Y. Hilton because obviously Paulie's ready to. Let's do the sit of the week. We'll go with Paul. Who do you have this week as your sit of the week? And give us a little explanation why you think you should sit this person.
So my sit of the week is it's not an easy sit, and we you have to sometimes, I just got done saying, you sometimes when you get to week 5 you got to start to make some difficult decisions on where you draft guys versus is it time to cut the cord once in a while for them. I'm gonna go Miles Sanders. I think you bench Miles Sanders this week. This past week he had 13 carries for 46 yards, huge game for him. Obviously, sense my sarcasm. But here's the thing: he plays the Steelers. He plays the Steelers this week, coming off of the proverbial bye. These guys are hungry. They're anxious to get on the field. And by the way, they give up the fewest rushing yards for any team in the NFL. They give up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running back, and they haven't allowed a single 100-yard rusher in the NFL. Couple that with the fact that the Eagles are not good. Their offensive line is a disaster right now. They're just piecing it together with Band-Aids. And they have no real wide receiver weapons threats that are going to keep people from stacking the box on Miles Sanders. So will he probably break double-digit points into the 10-11 range? Sure. But I'll tell you right, here's 2 guys that I pick out straight up that I would start over him. And Tom, you'd actually be happy with one of them. David Johnston. I'd start him over Miles Sanders this week. And James Robinson. I'd start both of those guys over Miles Sanders this week. I think Miles Sanders is going to have a off week. Maybe he breaks the double digit with 10, 11 points, but I can still see him getting single digits into the 8, 7 points this week against the Steelers.
Hey, listen, I don't disagree with the Steelers defense is phenomenal this year, but I think teams go into playing the Steelers with their game plan is they have the best rush defense, but they don't give up a ton of rushes, right? Opposing teams don't run against them. And I know, 2.7 yards per carry is what they're giving up right now. I think if teams ran the ball more, right? You look at running backs in the NFL, they don't average 5 yards per carry. That's their average, but they don't do that every play, right? They'll do 2 and 2 and 2, and then they'll run for 4, and then they'll run for 10. Is that's what they do. So I think offenses give up on the run game too much. And I think, like you said, is the Eagles don't have that pass offense right now, and Carson Wentz isn't playing up to Carson Wentz level of football. I think they have to rely on some of that run game, and even if it's just a game management aspect of their play calling, they're going to give Miles Sanders a lot of touches this week, whether it's through the pass game or through the rush game. And I think he has a solid game. I think he'll be up in the upper teens this week in points.
I'll take that bet. What number are you putting on it?
Upper teens. I don't know.
15?
17, 18. I was going to say 17. But
So I'm
yeah,
going to go over.
take
Okay,
15.
I'll go over under 15 with you. You're going to say 17. I'll give you 15. Over under 15.
Yeah,
You're taking
I'll
the
take over 15 for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm right.
Kev, you looked like you wanted something to say on that one.
I think the Eagles are back. I really do. I think I don't think they're as bad and as counted out as everyone thought they were. And I think Miles Sanders is gonna, have a great season, and he's the workhorse there. They're gonna have to use him. He's catching balls out of the backfield too. So
That offensive line is so beat up.
They did it.
So beat up.
I know, but guys are gonna start coming back. They're gonna be okay. I think they're number one in their division.
I wouldn't pick the Steelers to be the team that you're gonna all of a sudden.
No. I'm not saying. I mean, obviously the Steelers defense is great, but I think the Eagles have turned a corner, and I think
I don't disagree with
it's
that.
all that they have left. When you have somebody that's he's the standout player in that team, he's going to get the looks, he's going to get the touches, he's going to put up points this week. I would say 15 to 17 points is not unheard of at all for what he's going to do this week.
What was that other bet that we talked about like 5 minutes ago? What was the other?
T.Y. Hilton having a touch better than your boy Tim Patrick.
Okay, got it.
So moving on from Miles Sanders, who's definitely going to have over 15 fantasy points. E-Dog, who do you have as your sit of the week?
Well, I'll probably get some flack for this. But it's also another stud, Joe Mixon, coming off that big week. I know it's
not everybody's
probably foolish, but I like to be a little bit risky every now and then. But if I had Joe Mixon, I don't know if I would play him against the Baltimore defense this week. If you look at, he had Kenyon Drake numbers coming in before he had this monster 45-point fantasy week. Like he had 4.6 fantasy points his first week, 10.6 second week, 7.5 third week, and then he goes off for 45 points. Like he wasn't doing anything special. He just played a Jacksonville defense that, they're not good against the run. They give up the 6th most fantasy points. I mean, his performance probably helped, but he has the Baltimore defense who's top 5 against the run, or at least for, against giving up the fewest fantasy points for opposing running backs. It was the first time he had over 20 carries all year. I think 19 he had week 1, but I don't know. I don't see Joe Mixon following up nearly as good of a week this week against the Baltimore defense. And even going forward, if you look at their schedule, I think 5 of the next 7 weeks, not including a bye week or including a bye week, the Bengals face, I think all those defenses that they play are top 10 against fantasy running backs. So I think he's going to have a tough few weeks ahead of him, not just this week, but I don't know. I think that was a fluke game, and I think that I think all the Bengals this week, Burrow, I wouldn't start any of them if I didn't have to.
So
well, what do you think? You looked like you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the fact that it's Baltimore defense is always a scary start. But here's what I'll tell you. 2 things. One, I wish to God that Kenyon Drake even remotely looked like Joe Mixon the first 4 weeks of the season. He doesn't. But 2, I think that they've turned the corner in the Bengals and started realizing, like they did at the end of last year, that Joe Mixon is their lifeline, that he is the main artery of that offense. And if you look, Baltimore just gave up over 125 yards to Antonio Gibson from the Washington.
A lot of that was through the passing game.
Sure,
so,
but here's the thing: Mixon's not immune to. He's a heavy catcher. He catches the ball.
I know, but they have Gio who plays a lot of the third down work.
Yeah,
he still gets his looks.
I think this week when Gio had that one decent, I think it was like a 10-yard little dump pass out of the backfield. I think the announcers actually said, "Oh, we forgot Gio Bernard was on the team."
Yeah,
he's dwindled in the last couple of weeks.
So Eddie, do you have any off the cuff? Is there anybody that you would start over Mixon that maybe our listeners would be kind of like, oh, like that's surprising?
Joshua Kelly with no Eckler.
Fumble Ruski.
They needed a running back. I mean, I know they have Justin Jackson too,
Yeah.
but
Damien.
No, I like Kelly. He needs to hold on to the ball so he can get more carries. Every time he fumbles in that offense, they pull him out of the game for half the game. But no, I'm okay with that. I like that.
But yeah, I would start Joshua Kelly over Mixon this week, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm kind of on Paul's squad a little bit here. Like you said, Antonio Gibson had 125 total yards. You look at Nick Chubb, week 1, I think he averaged over 6 yards a carry. And you look at Clyde Edwards, right? Like the guy everybody's been kind of down on this year so far. He had, 16 or 17 fantasy points against the Baltimore Ravens defense. I think it's a tough play, especially, those guys aren't in the same division. When you have division rivals, obviously the defenses always step up. So I think it's going to be a tough play for sure, Eddie. I like where your head's at it. But again, I think it always goes back to the key rule of draft, right? You don't draft these guys to bench them. Just my take. Cav Dog, who do you have this week as your sit of the week? And give us a little explanation why.
Darrell Henderson. I think he was really trending towards an every week back, almost an RB2, borderline RB1 if you were really hurting in a spot. And then this week, I mean, they're going towards Malcolm Brown more and more. And I think he's just going to continue to lose touches, and he's not going to be reliable for where people needed to play him. Like, I know there's somebody in our league that, he's basically their RB1 right now because of Saquon Barkley going down. So I don't know. I think, 2 weeks ago, Henderson was looking like he was going to be a replacement for you, and he was going to put up some big numbers, and now he's just on the downward slope. And Cam Akers is looking like he's, on the mend, and it's going to be unreliable week to week. But more than anything, Malcolm Brown just this week vultured so many touches from him, and especially on the passing downs. So I don't know. I think this week I'm sitting him.
Smoke, what do you think about the Rams backfield and Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown, and Cam Akers?
So I said this a few weeks ago on the show. I'm totally against any time I see a 3-headed backfield in fantasy purposes. I own Cam Akers. It's disappointing that he got injured early on. I thought he would probably emerge as the leading back in that backfield, but I think if it does happen, it wouldn't happen. It's not going to happen until the end of the year, which is way too late now. But I agree with Cavi. I love the fact that he is like the lemon juice to poor lawyer Pete's wound for the last 2 years with the ugly Saquon Barkley trade that he made, and Saquon just can't stay on the field, and poor lawyer Pete has just suffered from it. And yeah, right. He, I think it's just, it's just a little bit more salt on that Darrell Henderson he's not a guy that you could rely on week to week. I totally agree. I stay away from that whole backfield in general. There's wide receivers on that team I like, not running backs.
Yeah,
wide receivers on that team I love.
Cooper Kupp. Cavie's man. So, Cav, you had your sit of the week as a running back. Obviously, looking at the paper here, your stream of the week as a running back. Let's just jump right into that. Roll into it. If you're going to bench Darrell Henderson, is this guy your next man up?
I don't know. So I was kind of struggling. I was looking for something that was a little bit, for somebody like that's in a league like ours, where I think this year everywhere running backs are just few and far between. It's really tough to find one out there. And this guy is not owned in a ton of leagues, but, he's available. He's out there where you can get him. So Damian Harris, he had a great week. He had 17 rushes for 100 yards. He broke a 41-yarder where he looked really good. I think he's a good play versus Denver. I think that there's never an awesome, running back to have in a Patriots offense. But I think this week is a good week for him. He's a good, play this week. I wouldn't, expect long-term success and a season-changing play from him. But if you need somebody to stream this week, you can go out and get Damian Harris. And I think, he'll get you 10, 12 points, maybe, right around the 10 mark. He's a good flex play. And he had a great week. He looked awesome out there. He looked head and tails above the rest of the running backs. He's going to get the running downs, and I think they're going to run the ball against Denver. They're going to go up quick, I think, and they're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to pound it, and Damian Harris is going to be the guy for that. He's not going to catch a ton of passes for you, but I think he's a fair stream this week. You right over there?
Yeah, just the bottom of that martini was a little
a little dirty.
It was a little strong.
Couldn't tell that it was a little dirty there, E. No, Cav, I like that stream. I think he's going to be a decent play going forward. It's just going to be kind of going back to our last conversation with the Rams running backfield, is you're going to basically have 4 running backs up there in New England. That's historically always been a problem. You never know who to start, when to start them, and how to start them. I think, you run into the same problem here, but I like the guy. He looks promising.
He's 100% somebody they have to look at week to week and match up. So if, the Patriots are going to be in a position where they're going to run the ball, then, I think he's a good play. But if they're going to be, playing from behind or in a shootout, then he's not going to be your guy because he's not going to do anything for you in a passing heavy game. And also Belichick's just, if he wakes up late or shows up late to practice, he might not even, play that week. So you got to watch that stuff.
Jonas Gray, right?
Jonas
I
Gray,
will not disagree with anything that any of you guys said because New England backfield always scares me. But I will say this: I looked at the Google Doc Cav, and I was actually surprised because you had Damian Harris as your stream of the week, and you had Scotty Miller as your stock rising, and I thought that would be a great flip-flop. Like I had Scotty Miller as a stream of the week last week. He did well. I think he's going to be a great stream of the week this week. I think Damian Harris is a stock that's rising. Even though New England's backfield makes you nervous, I feel like he is they drafted him to be their lead back. I don't think that they have any more confidence in Sony Michel. I said Michel. And he is, I think they're about to put him on, if they didn't already, I think they're putting him on IR. He's already going back to IR. Yeah. So I think that for the foreseeable future, he is going to be their lead back. I agree. He doesn't catch out of the backfield, but he has the potential to catch out of the backfield. Way too many heads to feed there, but I still wouldn't mind him as my RB2 or a flex play every single week. Rough schedule coming up for the foreseeable future: Denver, San Francisco, Buffalo. And then they have Baltimore sandwiched in with the Jets somewhere in there. So I like this play, Cavi. I think he's a great play this week. I think he's one of those guys that you want to have on your team long-term personally. And I think he's even better than a stream of the week personally.
Yeah, see, I think he is good against Denver. I think he'll be good against the Jets. I think he's worthless against San Francisco. I think it's gonna be week to. I just think it's week to week with him. But I mean, if you're in a the hell is it, a dynasty league, I mean, I think he's a good pickup because he's gonna be there for a while.
Do you think there's any thought around the fact that he rushed for 100 yards with presumably 2 just horrible quarterbacks? What can he do when he has a quarterback in there that's actually like a threat to run, a threat to pass? Like if you put Damian Harris back there when you have a quarterback that you don't know what he has capabilities of doing because he's actually pretty effective, I think Damian Harris can be better.
I think Cam vultures runs from him.
Straight up, I
Honestly,
agree.
Yeah,
He
especially goal line. That's why I don't like New England running backs.
But I think that Damian Harris could probably still run for 100 yards in almost every single game.
Ooh, I don't know about that. I think Cam
catch it. Carries.
So, I also think that maybe Cam doesn't play this week again. I think it's very likely.
That's very possible. With COVID, there's probably a 2-week window there.
But, yeah, actually, I think Cam won't play this week. So that's why I like Damian Harris too. I kind of left that part out. I forgot why I wrote Cam here, but HIPAA. Yeah, HIPAA. Yeah, but so yeah, I think Cam makes him less valuable when he comes back. Because
I agree with that.
Going to vulture.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think
he's going to vulture everything, touchdowns, and he's going to vulture.
I think they vulture the goal line. I think if he gets 15 to 20 carries a game, though, he's talented enough, and that offensive line is good enough to get him 100 yards.
He's not going to get 20 carries, though. He only got 15 this week with Bozos
17.
Or 17, yeah.
Here's the thing, too, is I think that –
and it was his first week back off IR, though. 17 carries his first week back off IR. Here's the thing.
He's not – one thing. biggest thing is Cam Newton's a running quarterback still, right? And even with the Patriots, that's what he's done. You look at his pass yards so far this year, they've been kind of dismal at best. And that means defenses are going to stack the box even more than a Brian Hoyer and a Stidham as quarterback back there. Those two are throwing quarterbacks. They're not going to run. They know that's what they're going to get. When you bring in a Cam Newton, they're going to stack the box, maybe even have a spy. And I think that's going to slow down the run game going forward when Cam's back in that starting offense. My opinion.
I disagree. If you ever look at any rushing threat quarterback, their running backs always prosper from that. They do better when they have a running quarterback. Look at it. Historically, that happens every time.
I'll look into it and I'll get back to you next week.
Well, I mean, you can look at Baltimore, and the backfield there is an absolute disaster because of that quarterback.
Well, and then your boy like Kenyon Drake, right? Smoke is Kyler Murray's been rushing the ball a lot this year, and he's a running quarterback.
That's the difference. That's the difference. He's just terrible though, because if you look at
Kansas City's backfield's not really lighting on fire.
Kenyon Drake is terrible. But if you look at their average, like maybe they don't get the ball enough. They don't get enough touches in Baltimore, right? Because they just do different things. And quite honestly, Lamar is just a different breed of quarterback. He runs the ball more than the running backs do. But if you look at their average yards per carry, it's actually good. You give those guys the ball 20 times and you have a great running back, but they don't get that. If New England gives the ball to Damian Harris 15 to 20 times with Cam Newton as a quarterback, I'm telling you right now, he'll hit that 100-yard mark.
Yeah, and if I didn't make bad trades to everybody, then our league wouldn't have as many rules. But unfortunately, it happens, and we do.
I thought you were going to go with the if my aunt had a dick, she'd be my uncle thing.
I was going to say that, but I held back and tried to switch it up. But anyway, so moving off Damian Harris, we spent a whole ton of time on Damian Harris, that backfield of many heads up there in New England, and we all know and had a taste of that at some point in our fantasy football careers. E-Dog, who do you have this week as your stream of the week?
My first thought was to pick Paulie's guy, but Paulie will touch on him. But I decided to go with Justin Herbert, the quarterback for the Chargers. And as a Keenan Allen owner, this kind of gives me hope that this guy took over for Tyrod, because ever since he did 3 straight games of 290 or more passing yards. This past week against Tampa Bay, he had 3 touchdowns passing, and he played 3 solid defenses: Kansas City, Carolina, and Tampa Bay. They're no slouch against the quarterback, and and even in the secondaries.
Bless you.
What's that?
Oh. Cavi.
Thank you.
But yeah, the 3 teams that he played are all top 5 according to Yahoo of allowing fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, and he averaged 22 in our league. He averaged 22 fantasy points so far in those 3 games as he became the starter. This week he has the Saints D, who gives up the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I see a shootout happening with Drew Brees down in the Dome. I can see another 300-yard game, 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe an INT. He has an INT in each game so far. But as a stream, I'll take that any day of the week if you need one.
Yeah, one of our beat writers actually informed us, earlier this week that team doctor out there for LA Chargers is actually related to Herbert. So that's why there hasn't been a Tyrod Taylor sighting in a while.
That may be fake news.
For sure, fake news. But no, is unfortunately for Tyrod, right? Is this guy came in there, he got paid a decent amount of money to become the starting quarterback, has that freak doctor injury there, that's still kind of on the down low. And it looks like he's never going to get his job back, right? Herbert's been a stud. Like you said, every week he's had 310 yards a game on average. I think the job's his going forward. Great draft pick there. And like you said, he's brought an uptick to every receiver there. Austin Eckler obviously had an uptick before his injury as well. I love this play, E-Dog. And hopefully this is somebody that people in, keeper leagues drafted late in the game and can keep for next year. So I love this pick. Smoke, who do you have as your stream of the week?
Well, to Eddie alluded a little bit to it. I'm going to go with Teddy Bridgewater for my stream of the week. He has just been getting better week after week after week, and I think this past week against
This is the guy
Arizona,
that you dogged. You literally dogged this guy.
I know.
Like,
it's.
all
I gotta be
offseason
honest.
and
It's
first couple weeks.
yeah. I'm not normally a Teddy Bridgewater guy. So sometimes you gotta swallow your pride and realize that, hey man, this guy might be a good play this week.
And you dogged him too because of the whole DJ Moore, right? As
a DJ Moore owner, I hate Teddy Bridgewater's guts right now because he likes Robbie Anderson better. But here's the thing: last week he played Arizona. He passed for 276 yards and a touchdown, and then on top of it, his legs start to look like pretty young, right? Like Teddy Bridgewater actually looked young. 32 yards rushing. He had a really nice scramble for a touchdown to run a touchdown in. He plays the Falcons this week, and that's my number one. If I'm looking for any quarterback that I need to stream, I'm looking at anybody playing the Atlanta Falcons. They've given up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They haven't given up any less than 30 points to any quarterback fantasy-wise this year. They've given up 13 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. They've given up 300 passing yards to every quarterback that they've played against. Russell Wilson. Now here's the thing: they've played elites, right? They've played Russell Wilson, Dak, and Rodgers, and every one of them have just lit them up. But they also played Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles, and if you combine their two numbers, each playing about half that game in Chicago, they even put up 31 total fantasy points combined. So this team is just destined to give up fantasy points to quarterbacks. I think Teddy Bridgewater has a solid game. And you start the bye weeks this week, right? So you have 2 quarterbacks that are typically starters in most fantasy leagues. You have Stafford on bye and you have Aaron Rodgers on bye. If either one of those 2 guys are your starters and you don't have a backup to them, go grab Teddy Bridgewater and start him with confidence against the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm pretty positive you'll have at least 20 to 30 fantasy points. Somewhere in that range, he'll put up over 20 fantasy points this week.
I love this play. Obviously, like you said, is you look at what Aaron Rodgers did this past Monday night. He shredded Atlanta's defense. And obviously, if you watch the game, they've had a ton of injuries, right? I think that at one point they were playing linebackers at the safety position. I think you see that again this week, right? They'll bring some folks up from the practice squad, but not to knock them, right? They're way better than any of us will ever be, but they're still practice squad players in the NFL. They're going to get exposed. Teddy Bridgewater is going to do that. I think DJ Moore, I think Robbie Anderson both have big games again. And I think, Davis out of the backfield has another big game. So I can't agree more with this pick. You said a little bit prior to, Paul speaking on Teddy Bridgewater that you were going to pick him. What, you have any additional input that you want to toss out here?
No, he basically hit the nail on the head, as they say. Playing against the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, any quarterback they make look good. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. I know they played a bunch of studs, as Paul alluded to, but, Mitch Trubisky, Foles, they're mediocres in my eyes. They're not Rodgers. They're not Dak. They're not Russ. They're mid-low tier of the quarterback skill players, I think. And if you're making them look like freaking Hall of Famers, then, any quarterback that you start against the Falcons, I think, home or away, I think it's a good pick, and you should have that W in the bag in your fantasy league. And speaking of the bag, my internal colostomy bag is full, so I have to go release that. I'll catch you guys next week.
See you, buddy.
Have a good one.
See you, Doug.
So Eddie or Tommy, I'll say this, just to finish up with this, I'm not telling people to go out there and bench a stud for Teddy Bridgewater, but in addition to the 2 quarterbacks that I mentioned that are on bye, there are some quarterbacks out there like Carson Wentz playing the Steelers. I would take Teddy Bridgewater over him. There is Baker Mayfield over the Colts. I would take Teddy Bridgewater over him. Cam Newton, Cavi alluded to it earlier, probably still going to be COVID. I would take, if you have these guys as your starting quarterbacks, I'll take Teddy Bridgewater as a streaming option all day over them.
Yeah, I like all those plays that you stated. Again, right, I think the Colts defense is finally starting to get the respect that they deserve. Baker Mayfield, he's been a struggle this year. I know last game he did okay, but they called bananas and let Jarvis Landry throw a touchdown to Baker to OBJ instead of Baker Mayfield. So yeah, I love that.
No, I think Baker's going to be just fine moving forward. I think that offense is finally clicking where it needs to be, and I think you're going to see him putting up 20 points. He's not going to be a stud all-star. He's not going to put up 50 points for you, but I think he's going to put up a consistent 20 points every week.
Mayfield or Bridgewater this week, Cavi?
I'm going Baker this week.
Throw something down. Let's go. We'll put it on.
I'm not going to bet on. I'm not that confident. But
no, I mean it's not like we actually give anything up. We'll just throw it on the board we'll see if we get.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree.
The only thing that's been given up this week is Paul, his V card to all those girls on the Bumble again.
Love
and
the Bumble.
He's been crushing it, just like Teddy Bridgewater is going to do this week.
That's not true. I don't even.
This is coming from I'm a Carolina Panthers fan, so it behooves me
my account.
that he's on to Christian Mingle now. It behooves me that Teddy Bridgewater does well as a Panthers fan. I'm just not sold. I think he's a adequate quarterback to win games. I just think fantasy-wise, I just don't see it with him.
Listen, when Cavi starts using words like behoove and adequate, I'm done for tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the show. I appreciate it. We appreciate it here at the Point After Show. Give us a listen to on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes. Paulie's Bumble's starting to record the podcast and play it out there. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Peace.